want
much
the
of the
models to be
cooling
able
to
to
that or something like, yeah.
Well, okay, but if you're going to say that the models are totally useless except for the present day, then I don't know why you're talking to me, because
No. I'm just saying that was a
has been
recent
based
paper
on
saying that there's all this, the LGM might not be like what we thought it.
Well, I mean,
assumptions
it's
have to
possible.
be looked
Sure.
at. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, anything is possible. But like, if you're going to do like a God of the Gaps argument, then you know, you're actually just kind of giving right. You know, you're just agreeing with your prior conceptions, right?
Well, I'm not.
Sun goes down, windows wide. One step closer to the other side. I can feel what others do. Can't stop this if I wanted to. What's the plan for tomorrow? Where will I wake up? Where will I wake up? Hey kid, what's the plan for tomorrow? Where will I wake up? Where will I wake up?
2023 was incredibly hot. Again, reaching records, as they say, every single year. The hottest year on record. Well, 2023 was a very hot year, both in the land and in the ocean. And if you've watched this channel for a while, you may know that oceans absorb about 90% of the heat, the excess heat, caused by global warming. It exceeded scientists' predictions. And of course, we have to factor in El Nino, but that is not the only reason. And I want to say something else that we've said a lot on this channel, which is exceeding scientists' predictions. We keep hearing it and we keep hearing it, and we just wonder, when are things going to exceed predictions so greatly that they spin out of control? I am going to head straight over to Paul. Paul, do you have anything to share on the science about this and the exceeding warmth and how it's affecting our coral reefs?
Yes, thank you, Regina. And for very good reason, coral reefs are called the rainforests of the seas, basically. I mean, they're one of Earth's most diverse ecosystems, and they do provide significant ecological, economic, and societal benefits. Some estimates as high as $9.8 trillion per year. I mean, wrap your head around that number. It's a huge number. And on our watch, we're watching the destruction and death of coral reefs around the world. I mean, bleaching was first seen in 1980, and now it's becoming more and more common. Basically, the coral loses the symbiotic algae because the water temperatures are too warm. And if the water temperatures stay elevated for a period of time, then the coral just dies and then gets overtaken by, just basically plain algae. It can happen, very, very quickly. Multiple bleachings are occurring around the world more and more often. I mean, basically NOAA has this great website called NOAA's Coral Reef Watch. They basically confirm this is the 4th global coral bleaching event around the world. So it started basically in February 2023 and it's continuing through now. It's in the North and South Hemisphere. Mostly it covers the tropics, but the tropics are expanding as the water gets warmer. So it's in the Atlantic, it's in the Pacific, it's in the Indian Ocean, it's also in the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Aden, and it's basically around the planet. The largest bleaching event on record, in terms of the longest, the most disruptive, longest duration, most intense was the 2014 to 2017 event, but this one, is still ongoing. To give you an example of, in Florida in 2023, the bleaching started early, has lasted longer, and it's the most severe on record. And we all know that the ocean temperatures in the Northern Hemisphere have warmed significantly. They're much beyond 4 or 5 standard deviations above normal. Part of that, according to James Hansen, is due to the reduction of sulfur, so there's fewer low-lying clouds over the ocean, so more absorption of solar radiation. Now, the NOAA Coral Reef Watch, like I said, is an excellent site. You can look at the bleaching alerts. They have something called degree heating weeks, the intensity and duration of these events. They have a map which they call hotspots to look at the worst areas for coral bleaching. And of course, it all comes down to the sea surface temperatures, and they have those and also anomalies and trends in sea surface temperatures. So all of the data that you want is on that basically NOAA's Coral Reef Watch. I mean, I, as a scuba diver and a snorkeler, an avid snorkeler and scuba diver my whole life, I've been fortunate to snorkel and scuba dive on many coral reefs, in the past, and also on kelp forests off California. And those kelp forests aren't there either. So this water, although we're focusing on coral, the seagrasses and the kelp beds and mangroves around the world are also being severely stressed by the very, very anomalously high water temperatures. And, as you mentioned, the coral reefs are vital for the gestation periods of many species of fish. So, when fish are hatched and, when they're juveniles, very young, about 25% of the world's fish spend some time in their life cycle when they're very young, mostly in coral reefs regions. And of course, because it's a symbiotic bacteria, phytoplankton, that has this relationship with the coral, that's why most coral reefs, the coral rock, need the sunlight. So that's why they're in the surface waters, and of course it's the surface waters that are warming the quickest and the worst around the planet. So we're witnessing basically the destruction of the globe's coral reefs. It is going to happen. It's happening on an ongoing fashion. There's just going to be none left soon. And I think of the Great Barrier Reef off Australia, like completely becoming just dead rock with this ugly looking green algae covering it. So yeah, that's where we're headed.
Thank you so much, Paul. I no doubt do not have the amount of scuba diving, and I have no scuba diving experience, and I certainly probably do not have the snorkeling experience you have. Of course, this was a fringing reef. The fringing reefs are those reefs that follow along the shore. It's spectacular and amazing. And the fringing reefs of the Red Sea, they're some of the best and most developed in the world. It's incredible because you can just walk straight, from the shore into the water, and bam, there's a reef. So the proximity to the shore is great. I think that we can really see the financial implications in this region because a lot of the resorts in the Red Sea, for better or for worse, have built their hotels around certain parts of this reef, and then they sort of de facto own it, and then the people who are in that hotel can go snorkel. But there are very little protections. Like I literally saw people coming out about the coral reefs.
Thanks, Regina. Thanks, Paul, for putting things squarely on the map as where we are today with the Great Barrier Reef, of course, which is the sort of world's flagship coral reef, but we're talking about all the tropical reefs this time. Now, I want to say that although this is the worst ever coral bleaching, it appears that it's a very different and shockingly worse change of events, which is, I suppose, nothing different with climate change, but this is quite shocking. This is a very passionate, yes, emotional situation. For example, Terry Hughes, I follow Terry Hughes on Twitter, and he's the world's leading expert on coral reefs. He's the recently resigned, retired from heading up the Australian Barrier Reef Scientific Survey. A few days ago, he posted this on Twitter. Scientists never, ever post this kind of stuff, I should point out. So he told us that I showed the results of aerial surveys of the bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef to my students, and then we wept. End of message. So this is the fifth major barrier reef bleach in the past 8 years. And as Paul said, the bleaching only occurred very recently. I think the late 80s was the firstest report of coral reef bleaching. So this is completely unnatural and abnormal. And it's getting, like everything else, it's getting very, very rapidly worse. The other difference of this, there are two other differences. One difference is that corals are dying already. One of the things we take a little bit of comfort in is that when the hot water forces the little organisms out of the coral reef skeleton, things will cool off and they'll come back and the reef will recover. And normally it takes many, many bleachings, one after another, for coral to actually die. So the divers have found very recently that reefs are dying. When they dive down there, the smell of the sulfur is bad. It's toxic. It's completely different the situation where they've ever dove before. The reefs are dying there, and they're getting already covered with algae. So the sort of terminal event of coral reefs, which is the end of a reef, is it becomes covered with algae. And of course looks quite different, obviously. They're also disintegrating. So it's not only bleaching, it's dying has taken place, and disintegration of parts of the reef has taken place. We've got, the last survey was 80% of the barrier reef was showing evidence of bleaching, was bleached. Only 3% of the reefs that they surveyed were not bleaching, were not bleached. Now, here's the very odd thing. As Paul mentioned, I make use of the excellent NOAA Coral Reef Watch. They've got maps of just about every type everywhere. But it's been very strange because although the entire tropical reefs of the world are at a high level of alert, as Paul mentioned, the measure of the weekly heat duration, everything's on high. When you look at the barrier reef, it sort of looks okay. It doesn't match the other things. So I think only yesterday I came across what the problem was. This is different bleaching. It's being bleached deep, deep, deep. The bleaching is extending down to about 60 feet. I mean, that's absolutely, completely unheard of. The Terry Hughes also said the extent and the severity and the duration of the bleach is far worse than anything that's ever been recorded. Far worse. So I want to finish off to say, yeah, this is emotional, this is personal, and this is also reflective on who we are. Back in 2005, I believe it was, and I was catching up on climate change research, I found out that the scientists were united in saying that 1.5 degrees C, we would practically lose the Great Barrier Reef and all the coral reefs. And that was a big reason why I started sort of campaigning and communicating at that time that we must not ever go above 1.5 degrees C. So at least we've got scientists and everybody agreed upon that. So my final comment is that when I was working with some environmental colleagues up in the city of Prince George, and we were going around to Rotary clubs and giving presentation. Of course, one of the themes was the Great Barrier Reef, because it had relatively recently been shown from space. So this is our largest living organism on planet Earth. It's not living, it's also the greatest example of mutualism, cooperative development and growth between species. So it's very, very, very special. So the final point is the coral reef is dying, but what does it mean about us? Right? Are our emotions dying? Right? Our who we are, our connection with the natural world, our value emotionally, with the wonder and magnificence of nature, is that dying? It appears it is. So all of us, and we know when we're not dead to these issues, we really have to twist some emotional arms of the rest of the world, because we've lost the Great Barrier Reef. There's silly stuff of scientists doing interesting stuff, but it's silly, laboratory experiments. Barrier Reef is dead. It's been killed. It's been killed by fossil fuel emissions.
Differently, as saying that LGM temp suggests this very high ECS. So I guess people can look at the data, and as you just were saying earlier, everyone can look at different things and have different interpretations.
Well, of course. But we can take those models with the high ECS, and there's not an aerosol issue. I mean, there could be aerosols back in the LGM that we're not getting wrong. I mean, there's wiggle room here, but none of them come close. They're a little bit off. None of them come close.
Okay. Although the recent paper was saying the very different cloud situation back in the LGM, which is what. Sure, but you were attributing but you want much the models of the cooling to be able to that or something
Well, okay, but if you're going to say that the models are totally useless except for the present day, then I don't know why you're talking to me, because
no. I'm just saying that was a recent paper saying that there's all this. The LGM might not be like what we thought it.
Well, I mean,
assumptions have to be looked at. Yeah.
Sure. It's a Rustica. Great to share.
Sure, if you were, I would probably agree with everything that you'd want to do. But that's not going to, by the way, even pro-doomerism, let me ask you the question. Are you trying to, you're for doom, are you trying to promote doom? Are you trying to get us there faster? And if so, what are the things you're doing on that front?
So I am against green technologies.
Okay.
And by virtue of being anti-EV, anti-wind, anti-nuclear, right? By virtue of being against these technologies, the upshot is that collapse will happen faster, right? Because all those technologies.
That's true.
Prolong.
We'll continue burning fossil fuels.
Right.
More,
they prolong civilization and allow for continued growth. So I'm not directly invested in speeding doom, but by virtue of being against technologies that further degrade the environment, that is, and because the things that would solve the problem of simultaneously being an environmentalist and wanting to maintain civilization aren't going to happen, like degrowth. Because of that, then yes, essentially I am indirectly promoting collapse.
So in a sense, what Michael Mann was saying about maybe you or people like you, I guess, in some sense is correct, right? He was saying that if you're for action on climate change, let's take that as a premise. For many people are, and I am, and many people are for action on climate change, which means getting rid of fossil fuels, which also, let's just say it, means replacing them with renewables and other kinds of, quote, green technology. If you are for that, then people who are doomers are against you and are against that. I mean, is he at least correct in that regard?
So I'm not going to define what it is for all doomers, right? Again,
but we're using you as an example. Yeah.
Again, Michael Mann is not an environmentalist. He is the opposite of an environmentalist. He is for the destruction of ecosystems. He is for new technologies that are going to be placed on locations that are pristine, by whether they're mines or they're going to be fields of solar panels or unknown effects of wind turbines in ocean ecologies, right? He is for all of the things that are degrading this planet right now in real time. And he's for them with the idea that that would allow human civilization to continue to grow, which,
Right.
because of all the other impacts of humans, will even further degrade various systems, right? So
Yeah.
to call me the one who is pro-collapse, actually, Michael Mann is setting the stage for a much larger collapse than I am. He said his idea is not just that 8 billion humans should collapse, but that 10 or 12 billion humans should collapse. And on our way out, we should create even more devastation to the planet, right? So I absolutely disagree that Michael Mann is sort of more in favor of preserving the planet or.
Well, no, I didn't say that.
All right,
I said that for people who want to fight climate change and get rid of fossil fuels and replace them with renewables and green technology. By the way, I also agree Michael's approach is not helpful, but not for the reasons you're saying. Yeah, I'm saying he sugarcoats it so much and makes it seem like, oh, it's so easy to fix. We'll just get to net zero in 2050 and everything will be fine. Wait a second. That's not true. We better be more alarmist, by the way, which is the other side I wanted to talk to you about, is doomer versus alarmist. I think there's another kind of doomer than you, and I'll call you the pro-doomer, maybe the regular doomer. They don't want doom. They just think it's inevitable, and they're just fearful there's nothing we can do about it. That's like a whole other, I'm sure they listen to you, but I mean, they're sort of a separate group. They don't want doom, but they think it's too late. Would you agree with that? That there is that kind of doomer as well?
I think that's correct.